Some of you know this already about me. Some of you might not be aware of this. Some of you do. Well, I used to when I worked in Liverpool, I had the responsibility for looking after what we termed in the financial industry high asset clients, or people who are high net worth clients would be another sort of thing. And I actually looked after people who, I mean, this is going back 20 plus years, and they made a crazy amount of money. So I had clients bringing in 50 to 80,000 a week. And just to say some of the little stories, things we were doing, you know, I remember helping somebody with some wine purchase, you know, and we did this whole transaction to buy a whole bunch of wine. And I say a whole bunch of wine, it was probably 3 bottles, but anyway. And it was like twice my annual salary, the amount of money that this individual was purchasing for some wine to be put in his cellar. Another time when you get into currency transactions, you can actually make a deal with currency. You can do some forward dealing with currencies. And I did a deal for someone as we were negotiating something they wanted to get a yacht. You know, just as your normal everyday thing. Now, I did everyday stuff as well. You know, back in the day, we still had checkbooks back then. You know, I had checkbooks and set standing orders up and traveler's checks when you went abroad and stuff like that. But speaking about being abroad, one time one guy came in and I got him $100,000 cash, and he was going to Vegas for the weekend, and he came into the office, High Street Bank. He collected it, put it in this rucksack, and walked out the door with $100,000 in his backpack. You know, and so when I say like high asset clients, these were like your people who are high net worth in terms of the bank. This is what we called these types of clients, high net worth individuals. And I went from there and I moved into financial planning. And when you're a financial planning person, you know, your focus really is to make more wealth and lower taxes. That's the bottom line. Really. You want to make your money make more money, and you want to make your tax bill go down. So as soon as there's different ways you can put money into different things to give you tax breaks, that's what you do. And at the same time, you try to make the money go bigger and bigger. And you know, there was this idea in our culture, which is still prevalent. It was prevalent 20-something years ago when we were in Liverpool. It's still relevant and applicable today, where we treat people who have more stuff as more valuable. And the higher your assets, then the higher your value. And to quote Kanye West, you know, a person's worth is not what a person is worth, right? So, not that you ever quote Kanye in church, but it just happened. That's probably the only quote you can use from him, by the way, so no, I'm not recommending taking anything else. But I wonder, is your personal worth really what you're personally worth? And that's the way the world works. I mean, we even called them high value clients or net asset clients. And even called them, by definition, we called them people who are more valuable. You know, those with the better cars, the better houses, the better stuff. You know, we look at that and we think that somehow it's better, and our world works that way. Our Western culture sort of drives that thing, where the latest brands and that type of thing, you know, and they go on the most exotic holidays or the best trips, or I don't know, you know what I mean. And it's still popular, isn't it? I mean, if you've got money, you want to make more money, and if you pay taxes, you want to pay less taxes. I mean, that's nothing new, right? I mean, that's still pretty popular. Last time I checked, I think people still try to do that. And it wasn't a new idea. Like, there's this story in the Bible where something similar happened. And there were these people, and they came up to Jesus, and they were listening to Jesus as he was teaching, and this was written. It's in the book of Matthew, and it's one of the eyewitness accounts. So Matthew was writing down his firsthand experiences of seeing this time with Jesus. And he tells this story, but it's on the back of this question. And this question comes to Jesus. So they're in this crowd, and Jesus is talking about different stuff. And one of these guys says in the crowd, he's like, hey, come on. Like, what you need to do is tell my brother to share the inheritance with me. And I'm not sure what's going on, or what was being the issue. Sorry, it's in Luke. I said Matthew. I should have said Luke. Sorry. I got to get glasses. So Luke 12, this guy in the crowd says, like, come on. And Jesus answers back. He just is like, come on, man. It's like, who made me your mediator? Who made me your judge? Like, who set me up to be this judge and mediator for you? You know, just kind of a harsh reply. Because a few verses earlier, Jesus was just teaching about prayer and saying, ask, seek, knock. And here, this person is actually asking and seeking and essentially knocking. So, in the context, you sort of feel like, well, that's a bit rough, isn't it? You know, I'm asking for your help, you're Jesus, and you're just been like, yeah, who's made me the, mediator for your problems? Well, hello? I thought you were. That's Jesus, come on. So there's got to be something else going on. There must be something else happening in this scenario. We don't know what it is. We don't know if the brother is defrauding the other brother. We don't know. None of that's given. But Jesus somehow discerns that there's something else at hand, because he then carries on, and Jesus turns and speaks to the crowd, and he says, look out. He says, be careful. Watch out. Be on your guard. Be warned. Don't let any kind of greed get in. Because life is not defined by what you have, even when you have a lot. See, somehow he discerned that there must have been something else going on in this scenario. He must have figured out that it wasn't just an issue of being just or right or someone being taken advantage of, because in Scripture those things need to be addressed. So there's clearly something else going on. And Jesus discerned that the issue going on was something else going on in this guy's heart, this guy's life. And so what he does is he starts to tell a story. And he kind of totally ignores the man's demand for justice and his plea for something. And what Jesus does, which he did all the time, if you haven't read much about the life of Jesus, you can read in the books of the Bible. There's 4 biographies, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and John are more like eyewitness, first-hand accounts, and Luke was a report that had been done after. Luke did some investigations and investigated the story. So you got 4 accounts of the time with Jesus. And so many times when people came for one thing, he ends up telling a story. It's like, what? I don't get it. And sometimes maybe we do that. We came to Jesus with one thing, and then he totally just seems to do something different to what we didn't really quite expect or even ask for. And the same thing happens in this situation. He says to everybody, watch out for this greed, and then he starts to tell a story about a farmer. He starts to tell people that there was this farmer, and this farmer had like a really great crop. He had some really good fields, and he got some really great crops. And so he says to himself, what can I do? Hey, my barns are not big enough for all of this stuff. I know what I'll do. I'm going to tear down the other barns. I'm going to build bigger barns. I'm going to build bigger ones. And then I'm going to gather my harvest, and I'll say to myself, well done you, you've got all that you need for years. So just take it easy and, enjoy life. But that very night, God says to him, you fool. It's a nice God, isn't it? You numpsy. Tonight, you're going to die. Your time's up. You're waiting for something, and your time's up. And then who's going to get everything that you stored up for yourself? This is how it will be for everyone who stores up treasures for themselves, but are not rich in God's eyes. And there's a play on words there. He's all of a sudden saying this person who's incredibly rich is somehow incredibly poor. That's what Jesus is saying in this story, And the simple story questions whether our pursuit in life is all about building bigger barns. Yeah, and it's more like, is there more to life than this? Is there a bigger purpose to life than this? Because here's how it usually works. You've probably experienced this. We all do this to some degree. What happens is we earn some wages. Your wages increase. And I knew people that had mortgage payments of over $25,000 a month. End up having to file for bankruptcy. We sometimes think to ourselves, you're like, how's that even possible? How's it possible? How can you have had so much money and then still not be able to service the lifestyle? And it's because what happens is the more we make, the more we spend. That really is kind of how it works. The more we make, the more we spend. We get bigger houses, bigger mortgages, better cars with bigger payments, more expensive clothing, more expensive food. But this is just the way the economy works. Okay, this is just the way it happens. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is what happens. Just be aware of it. But not only as we earn more do we sort of think we should spend more. As we earn more, we think we deserve more. You can think you're entitled to more. I don't know if you've ever experienced someone like that. I looked after them for years. Trust me. When people have a lot of money, they do not like you to ever say no to them. I spent plenty of time running around Liverpool, running errands for people who had a lot of money. That was my job. That's what I did, because they deserved it and they believed they were entitled to it. It's just the way it worked. I don't know. It just is, right? Have you ever noticed that? Sometimes the more we begin to make, then the more we feel entitled to living this way or having these certain things. We expect it, we demand it, we think we've earned it, we're entitled to it. And so this is just how things happen. This is just a little bit of how life works in some ways. The more you earn, the more you spend, and the more you earn, sometimes you think the more you are entitled to or the more you deserve. But let's just add a little caveat, just be very clear. Jesus never said earning money was wrong. He never said that wealth in and of itself is the issue. Wealth is just a tool. He never said that having wealth is wrong. There's nothing wrong with the huge harvest. And in fact, brilliant, awesome. Market conditions went well for you. You got a huge harvest, awesome. The field worked, great. You bought that piece of land and it worked, awesome. There's nothing in that story to say that the harvest was wrong and having a huge harvest was wrong. There's nothing in that story about that. Great, you benefited from hard work. Well done. There's nothing wrong with that either. You made a lot of money because you worked really hard. Awesome. There's nothing wrong with that either. So it's not just anti-wealth. The story's not anti-wealth. The story isn't anti-having things, because there's nothing in there to say that those things in and of themselves were wrong. And if you're working in your jobs, hey, you should work and earn as much as you can. Go for it. Why not? Be as professional as possible. Earn what you can. Go for it. That's fine. Don't lose your soul in the process. But in the meantime, hey, there's nothing wrong with having money. Go for it. Make as much as you can. Aim high. Go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. Totally nothing wrong with that. There's nothing. The story doesn't say that. The story doesn't say that there's any. Doesn't say that that's the issue. And in some ways, it's also kind of a confusing story, because if you were a farmer, wouldn't the normal thing you do would be to build a barn? Of course, you would have a barn. And there's nothing wrong with having a barn, because you need a barn. You need something for the future. The issue in this case, of course, is he had a barn which wasn't big enough. So he tore it down to build a bigger barn for himself. But the issue wasn't needing a barn. You need a barn for the future. Of course you do, right? You need to have some sort of place where you're able to reap the harvest So the barn in and of itself, the barn's not wrong. The barn's not what the issue is. So something else is going on. If we dig into the story, we got to figure out what the real issue is. And Jesus said what the issue was. He said it at the very end of the story. He said this. He said, "This is how it will be for everyone who stores up treasures for themselves." The issue is the point of the harvest. The issue is the recipient of the harvest. It's storing up just for themselves. Jesus is saying that's what the issue is. That's what the rub in the story is, if you like. They're just collecting for themselves. And if you go back to the beginning, Jesus says, look out, watch out, everybody look out, everybody be careful. Because this little virus, this little thing can get into all of our hearts called greed. It's very, very easy to feel jealous of people who have a lot of stuff. You know? I remember, again, going back to the story in Liverpool, this guy just moved and we got the whole thing out, whole house kitted out with brand new Bang & Olufsen sort of PA equipment, stereo equipment. Really nice stuff. Really, 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 really expensive stuff. And at the same time, we were taking a trip of teenagers from Liverpool to go do some work in Zambia. And I had teenagers, the youth group that we were helping lead, they were washing cars, they were doing bake sales, they were doing everything they could to try to copper up. They were babysitting, they were doing whatever they could to gather money, just to try to save enough money so they could do a missions trip. And I kid you not, like this guy could have, every Friday morning I spoke to him and asked him how much money we were supposed to send to other countries for better tax purposes. And it was never less than 50 or 60,000 a week I was moving for him. And like he could have paid for this trip without even blinking. Yeah? And I have to be honest with you and say, isn't it easy? It was easy for me to sit there and think, you have so much. And I feel really jealous and I feel angry at you and I feel, but I'm going to be polite because basically I'm your slave, But anyway, and at the start of the story, Jesus is saying, look out, watch out. He's saying to everybody, watch out. This thing can creep into all of our hearts. It's not just people who have something. This thing can creep into all of our hearts. And there's this thing called greed, which can wiggle into there no matter how much we have or don't have. And it can change the way we treat people and treat ourselves and treat others. That's the challenge. This isn't a anti-wealth, anti-rich people message. This is a look out. There's something that can wiggle into your heart and infect it. And we got to be careful of it. We got to be careful of it. Eugene Peterson says it like this. He says this amazing quote. He says, "We stop viewing wealth as love to be shared, and we start calculating it as a power and a position to be used." This gift from God, wealth, is a love to be shared, but we turn it into a power and a position to be used over others. And you do need a barn, okay? You need reserves. That's not the issue, like I said. But what if instead of just focusing on making more money and lowering taxes, what about instead of just focusing on building a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger barn for yourself, instead of being a barn builder, what if we focused on being benefactors? What if we just flipped the script a little bit? What if we decided to live another way? And if you're not a follower of Jesus, you can kind of ignore all this stuff if you want. I mean, because this doesn't, you can live however you like. But if you're a follower of Jesus, you're sort of saying, okay, Jesus, teach me. I want to learn from you. I want to learn that there might be a better way to live. And so if you're a follower of Jesus, this kind of stuff applies to you. It applies to all of us. It's essentially saying instead of storing, how about we become sharing? How about we, instead of storing wealth, we look to share wealth. This is the nub in the story. Now I'm going to need a volunteer. So, volunteers, anybody? Yeah, you've seen the notes. You're like, I want to volunteer. If you want to? Yeah, okay. Well, he knows. Christopher knows what's going to happen, so he's snuck in on there. Oh, I do have to double check something first. Just make sure that if you come up here, you're going to be on camera. So, and also I have to check you're not dairy intolerant and you don't have any nut allergies either. Right? I just got to get a disclaimer. And no, just kidding. So anyway, just imagine. Like I got some stuff here for you, and I've got a chocolate bar for you. So you can have that. Go ahead and eat it.
You want me to eat it?
In front of everybody. Yeah, go ahead for it. We don't have all day, so come on. Come on, man alive. It's a good chocolate, is it? You can have another one. Yeah. Right, this you can have nuts, right? This has got nuts, so. Just imagine like this is your harvest. This is the blessing that's come into your life. So keep going. Come on, man. I bet some of you are thinking, man, I wish I went up there. Man. Let me put those somewhere. Hold those. Go on. Man. See, what happens is we think that everything, I've had such a great harvest. I know what I need to do. I need a bigger barn. I just need a bigger barn. Man, this guy's not a very good barn builder, is he? I need a barn. Now, there's going to reach a point where is he even going to be able to enjoy all of this? No, you try. I mean, go ahead. You want me to feed you another one? Oh. Now what happens is, and Jesus says this in the story, like, you die, and then, like, sorry, not today. Jane, it's okay. Oh, no. Sorry, you're it is today. You've got about 6 hours left, I think, unless we can rush you now to the emergency room. So Jesus is like, okay, you're gonna die, and when you die, like, who reaps the benefit of everything that you've had? But what if instead of being a barn builder, you were a benefactor? What if focusing on storing, you focused on sharing? Instead of being a container, you were a conduit. Not something where everything stopped with you, but everything flowed through you. So actually, there's enough chocolate in here for everybody to have some, if only the barn builder would become a giver, not a keeper. So see if anybody wants some chocolate. But ask them if, hey, don't have it if you can have nuts, and don't have dairy. I don't have any. Yeah, Jesus is saying, like, wealth becomes a love to be shared, not a power to be used over others. It becomes something to not just store, but to share. And he's got enough chocolate. There's plenty of chocolate. Plenty of chocolate there. And this month we've been doing a series called The Cost of Living. And today we're wrapping it up. And if you've missed any of the other ones, you can catch them on the YouTube channel. We looked at a number of different topics. And we tried to look at it in a way that was a little bit different, not just focusing on sort of money as such, but we're at the whole cost of living. Because in the UK, we're going through this cost of living thing. And the first week we looked at what it means to live free from anxiety and free from worry. Then we looked at what it means to live with margin. And here's how you know if you have margin in your life. If you're able to save and if you're able to give. If you're unable to save and if you're unable to give, then you don't yet have margin in your life. That's an easy way to figure out if you have margin, especially in your income and in your finances. And then we looked at living with rest, taking a break, taking a breather. And today we're looking at living with purpose, because your life is more than just supposed to be a barn builder. Your life is something greater than that. We don't have to follow the pattern of the world. We don't have to do things the way society and culture tells us or demands on us of how we do things. And I just wonder, like, what's that sort of costing us? What is it really affecting us? Because this simple story challenges so much about our culture. Because we think we deserve and we earn and we're entitled to. And I want to give you a few figures here. You might know this, you might not. Have you ever paused to realize that especially in the West, we have got so much stuff? If you've ever traveled abroad, you begin to realize that in the West, we are like blessed beyond measure. It's staggering to think what we have. Francis, who was here a few months ago, and him and his wife run a ministry in Goa. It only costs them £40 to get a brand new sewing machine and put a lady who's been taken out of prostitution and put into being able to be a tailor. It only costs them £40 to train her and equip her with the sewing machine. It's staggering, and I understand it's economics, it's different countries, it's different things function differently. But it's staggering when in the West we have so much and other places have so little. It's staggering. And here's a couple of slides, and all of this research is within the last couple of years. So this is pre-cost of living UK crisis data. We don't have that information out, but all of this information we're about to look through next is all within the last couple of years. And in 20, no, thank you. I will later though. No, there's plenty later. And when you go, if you've got little ones and you've got kiddos, make sure you take some. We'll put it at the door. You can take it for your kiddos. Just what you wanted. Feed your kids a bunch of chocolate before they come home this afternoon. Yeah, woohoo, hyper. So did you know in 2020, adults in the UK they calculated out. They did some data, and they'll spend £65,000 in their lifetime on gadgets. That's phones, TVs, laptops, smartwatches, etc. in their lifetime. And in the UK currently, this is hot off the presses, this data. The average spend in the UK per month on a mobile phone is £25 and 62p. And if you have more than one device in your home, I have 6 people in my home. So, yeah. I've realized the best way to save money is get rid of 4 children. So, hey, no. Yeah, don't publish that. No, anyway, just kidding. Listen to this. We've just been eating some chocolate. This is the average amount that's spent in the UK. This is data from 2021. Is £33 per month is spent on chocolate. Chocolate alone. In the UK, the average household spend on alcohol. This is alcohol which was within recommended guideline limits. Okay. The average monthly spend of alcohol in the UK is £49 per month. We also spend £44 a month on coffees, takeaway coffees, hot drinks. They say that the average person spends £3.40 per coffee, and we buy them 3 a week by average. £44 a month on coffee. And of course, with all that chocolate and all that booze and all that caffeine, you got to do something like try to work it off. So we join gyms. And so gym memberships, personal trainers, fitness classes, online fitness apps. Now those come to £52 and 16p per month. But when you add in protein powders and exercise clothing, you spend an average of £82 and 85p per month just on working off all that chocolate, booze, and caffeine that you have consumed. And in the UK, the average amount that someone gives to charity, this is not church, this is not church talk, this is what you give to charity. The average amount of money given to charities, British Heart Foundation, RSPCC, Bernardos, Mind, any charity, the charity at large, the average amount given to charity per month in the UK, £27. Because we've forgotten that wealth is a love to be shared, and we think it's a love to be stored. It's a power to be used because it makes our lives better for the things that we want. And I'm not trying to get at you. Please don't feel like, oh, this is just some like guilt trip. No. This is just saying there's another way to live life. We can live life free from the way the world tells us how to live. There's another way to learn. There's another way to learn to live, you know? And this data is from the US. This is from 2019. And this is a church-based data. This is sort of, they analyze the data. There's a survey, there's a financial thing that's done every couple of years, and it's based on the top 11 denominations and the numbers of members that are in those 11 denominations across the board, Catholic, Protestant, etc. And what they do is they work out the average percentage of giving to the church. This is giving to the church. The numbers are lower now than they were in 1921 to 1933, which is the era called the Great Depression. And it's gone down since then, ever since then. The highest by percentage giving that followers of Jesus gave to their churches is lower now than it was in the Great Depression. This is just American data. And it's always gone down year on year since the Great Depression, when wages were lowest. Now wages are highest, percentage giving is actually lowest. It's staggering. It is crazy. It is really, if you're a numbers buffin, speak to me later and I can give you the resources for the paper. It's a fairly academic book, but it's very interesting. One thing I found really funny is the average American spends 17 times more on candy than they do on charity. Anyways, it's full of funny facts like that. Okay, so, but culture and society does everything it can to make you think only of yourself, only of ourselves. That's the way the world works. That's the way society works. Marketing works that way. That's the way it works. The more you make, the more you spend. The more you make, the more you deserve. This is the way society works, culture works at large. And I just want to ask the question, is that really living? Is that really living? Is that full life? Is that really living? And was it really costing you to live like this? What is it really costing you if we treat the rich as more valuable than the poor? What does that really cost us to live like that? We sort of grade people and we look at someone who's more wealthy as more valuable. Is that the right way to live? Is that really what we want our children to learn? What's it really costing us? What's it really costing us to live like this? What is it really costing you if we live thinking that we always need more? That we're not satisfied, that we need more, that we always have to need more, and that the best approach is to just tear down the barn and build a bigger one. And that barn's not big enough, so I'm going to tear that one down and build a bigger one. Is that really the way to spend our lives? Living that we always think we need more. And as a local church, we just want to say there's another way to live. There's another way to sort of live your life. And one really practical thing that we're doing, which we've been talking about this whole series, is we're running the Cap Money course. It's a free course. It's over 3 weeks. you can get there and you can sit down and just look at your finances and start thinking about stuff. Now, you don't have to share your finances with everybody else. You're not going to put it all on the table and be like, hey, look what I earned, look what I, no. It's just a way to help one another. I did the course last year. It's really good. And you can sign up today. There's the information stuff just at the back there if you want to find out about the course. Now, the other thing that we're doing, put out in the email, is Trevor realized that in the budget change, there were some rules that were changed about your state pension. And so we thought, well, hey, I know what? Maybe not everybody knows about this, Trevor thought. And he said, hey, why don't we make it available? Now you might have paid into the state pension, and you might have some missing years or some gap years. And the rules are changing with how you can buy those missing years back. And Trevor said, hey, if anybody would like to sit down, I'll help you set up your government gateway account. I'll look through it with you. We'll find out if there's any missing years, and we'll figure out what you can do to sort of buy them back. Now, this is especially important if you're over the age of 50, because you're not going to be able to buy those back after a certain time, which is soon. So we thought, hey, you know what? We are a local church that should be for our local community. How can we find ways to just help people? So we're running the money course. And we're just saying, hey, you know what? Why don't we just do this free state pension review and just make people aware of it and see how we can help one another? So if that's something you think, actually, I don't know, I'd like to find out about that, you can sign up today. There's a clipboard at the back. I'll be at the back. You can sign up. Trevor's away this morning. But you can sign up at the back, and I'll be there. You can just sign up, and we're going to contact you and arrange an appointment so you can take about half an hour to go through your state pension stuff. Practically help people. Now, maybe there's somebody in your life, somebody in your family, somebody in your household that would benefit from just having somebody sit down with them, go through some money stuff. Bring them along to the money course. Bring them along to the pension thing. It's just a free service. Why? Because we want to help people, and we believe as followers of Jesus, we should be for everybody else. We should be for others, not for ourselves. Because wealth is something to be shared, not stored. So we want to help one another. Use our resources to help one another. Yeah? And I also want to talk about another little practical thing that we can consider. And this might be a new concept. Maybe some of you have thought of this already. Maybe some of you haven't. Here's the idea. What if you gave yourself a finish line? Well, instead of chasing this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, then what happens is it keeps moving. You know, as soon as I make this amount of money, I'll be okay. But then once I've made that amount of money, I've actually got bigger car payments, and I've got bigger house payments, and so I have to keep going, and I have to keep going, and I have to keep going, and I have to keep going. What if you just give yourself a finish line? What if you just decide, once I hit that, I don't need to keep going to try to accrue. My barn is okay. I don't need to build bigger and bigger barns. The barn I've got will be okay. Now, this is incredibly personal because what is right for you and your family and you and your situation is going to be different to what it is for you and your situation and you and your position. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So you need to work it out. But what if you decided to give yourself a finish line? And what if instead of as wages go up, your spending goes up, you decide to let your wages go up, but you keep your lifestyle the way it was? And you give yourself more and more margin to be a benefactor, not a barn builder. It's not just the Bill Gates of this world that can become philanthropists. For £5, you can bring a chocolate egg. For 40 pounds, you can change a young lady's life in India. Because we know Francis will use it. And they will bring that girl and put her through training and equip her and teach her how to use that sewing machine. And then she has a sewing machine and she has her own business being a tailor. You don't have to be Warren Buffett and have billions and billions and billions of pounds. You don't have to be Jeff Bezos and have so much surplus that okay, now I can be generous. Because that's the other thing. We fall into this trap that says, one day I will, if only, and once I've got this in place, and once I've done that, then I will be able to. No. You can do it now. The highest level of generosity, US data, of course, happened during the Great Depression, 1921 to 1933. So the more you make, you fall into a trap about the more you need, the more you deserve, the more you're entitled to, rather than it being the more I can share. It's just practical suggestions. For one coffee less per week, you can almost buy a sewing machine. Maybe one less bottle of wine a month. I don't know what sort of value, what price you put on your wine, but in a couple of months, you could afford a sewing machine. It's just practical. And you're going to have to work out what's right for you in your situation and in your position. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not a guilt trip, and it's not a God loves you more if only you did this. No, it's not about that. God loves you so much that no matter how much you have, he wants you to be aware that there's something called greed, which is like a virus, which can wiggle like a little thing into all of our hearts, no matter how much you have, whether you have a lot or little. He loves you so much. That's the thing we're looking out for. The problem is not wealth. The problem is the greed and storing up for yourself. That's the issue, okay? It's bigger. It's not an anti-wealth thing. I hope you catch our heart there. You know, what if we say once this car's paid off, I don't need to upgrade it? I can keep it the way it is. I don't know. You got to figure out some practical solutions for yourself. Anyway, what if we learned to give ourselves a finish line and gave ourselves a contentment line? That we realize that I can learn contentment. I can learn to say that enough is enough. See, what if we could increase our level of sharing rather than our level of storing? That would change the world. It would, wouldn't it? There's enough people in the world to make a crazy difference if people lived this way. The purpose of your life is so much more than just being a barn builder. Man, that farmer spent his whole life doing that. And he ended up dying a poor man. I don't want that for you. Your life is more than being a barn builder. You have a greater purpose for your life. And as we wrap it up, let me tell you how and why I know this. Because Jesus showed this to me. Jesus showed this to us. You might not believe in Jesus, and I'm so grateful that you're here today and you're leaning in and paying attention. I really appreciate that. And you might not believe in Jesus, but it's crazy how generous and good God is. And again, I'm going to quote from Eugene Peterson. He says it like this. He says, "We are given what we need and much, much more. We're given not just a few trees to shade us from the sun, but entire forests of pine and beech and oak. We're given not just a few stars so that we can locate the north, but skies full of pictures and stories and galaxies. We are not given just a few birds, but a huge ballet company of shapes and colors and songs pirouetting through the sky in endless delight. Our Creator God loves to be generous and lavish and abundant and over the top and totally creative and totally generous. That's why I know there's another way to live, because I've seen the way He lives, the way He treated others. Because He doesn't save you half. He doesn't save you a little bit. He saves you fully, entirely. He saves you lavishly. He saves you not just so you barely scrape by and get into heaven. He doesn't save you so you just make it. He saves you so your life is full. Full. I have come to give you life, and a full life. My mercies are new every morning. My kindness is without end. My patience, my love is overflowing. He is so kind and so good and so generous. It's who he is, and he can't help but be that way because it's who he is, because he loves. And when you love someone, you give. You can give something to somebody without loving them. Remember we talked about it saying remember you got a gift if you work in an office and you might get a gift from your boss or a gift from a colleague. It doesn't mean they love you. So you can give without loving. But it's impossible to love without giving. When you really love somebody, you can't help but give. God so loved the world that he gave. God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish. You're not going to die. You're going to have a full life, an everlasting life, a never-ending life. You're going to have a life that's so different to the life of everything else because I want to give you a full life. I love you so much. I give you my Son. My Son. If you trust him, believe in him, follow him, begin to learn there's another way to live, oh my gosh, it's going to change everything about your life. And you're not going to die. You're going to just live endless life. God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. And he did this to us without us having to prove our worth, purchase our way, or perform for his attention. He did it before we could do any of those things. He loved you in spite of everything. He loves us. That's how I want to live with a purpose in my life. My cup overflows. My cup overflows. Yeah, I have more. We have more blessing than we can contain. My cup overflows. Out of you will flow rivers of living water. This is the Jesus I serve. This is the Jesus I have discovered, who just loves us so incredibly much and changes our lives. And as we wrap up this whole series, if you caught nothing from this whole series, maybe a few financial tips, great. But what I really want you to know is Jesus loves you so incredibly much. And learning to live like Jesus is learning to live a totally different way. And it sets you free. It sets you free from so much of the way the world functions. And Jesus does not ask you to prove your worth or pay your way or perform to get his attention. You don't prove yourself, pay anything, or perform to get his attention. He loves you. So as we wrap up, I just want to pray for you. And if you have any questions, you want to chat about anything else, then we can definitely do that at the end. And if you want to sign up at the end of the table. But I just want to pray for you if that's okay. Jesus, we just thank you so much for who you are. God, we thank you that you were here on earth and you told these simple stories, but when we dig into them, oh my gosh, so much going on. And thank you that you show us there's another way to live. Help us to find contentment. Help us to learn enough is enough. God, help us to find finish lines. And God, help us to stop being barn builders and learn to be benefactors. God, I just pray for everyone who's here, whether they're in the room or watching online, that they would just begin to learn a little bit more about what you're like. And I ask that in your goodness and your kindness, you would meet with them. We thank you that you love us incredibly and you invite us to discover a new way of life. In your name we pray. Amen. Have an awesome week, everything you got going on. Make sure you grab some chocolates. If you want, take some chocolate for the kiddos. We'll put it back in a basket and get it to the door. But yeah, have an incredible, incredible week, and we'll start with some new series next week. Awesome. Thank you.